John Troutwine is here today with us from Reno Rennsport, and if you've been tuning in each week, we've had a different guest from their establishment. Each one of them are the most talented automotive repair techs you may ever find. John, before we get started, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I've been working on cars for about 8 or 9 years now. I've been at Reno Rennsport for 4 years.
And what made you get into working on cars? Where did that start?
Well, as a young kid, I kind of got into them, thought they were neat and cool, and started tinkering with them, and one thing led to the next, and here we are.
And when I was about that young age, I remember I used to tell my parents what cars were, and it was just something that was in me, and I can't describe it. It's just, something that I live and breathe and love and have a passion for, so I understand that, and it's really interesting for me to watch my son have that same experience, and just a passion and a love for cars. You just have it, and there are a lot of us out there that do. Now, how long have you been working on cars? Specifically, what are your specialties more?
What I specialize in is BMWs and Minis. Our shop also does Porsches. We have a couple of techs there that do those as well.
Yeah, and your shop has what I call the mad scientist, Matt Lawrence, and Steve Bartley. They're just amazing. Your whole crew, from the front counter with Ryan to Brian Louder, one of the co-owners, and even your technician that does your wheels and tires, and just front to back. You just can't have a finer business. Now, it's getting a little colder out day by day, and pretty soon winter will be here again, and it seems like this time about every year I get asked the same questions. You probably do too. What's the difference between four-wheel drive and all-wheel drive? Which one's better?
Well, whether or not one's better than the other, that's more of an opinion. Four-wheel drive is typically a selectable two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive system. Been in trucks for a lot of years. A few cars have had it throughout the years. All-wheel drive is something that's typically always on. All four wheels are always being driven by the engine, whereas four-wheel drive is something that you select whether you want it to be driving 2 of the wheels or 4 of the wheels. Typically, it's associated with trucks.
Well, and in the old days, you had to get out and turn the hubs to get them to connect. Nowadays, there are some that have the push buttons or just flip the switch, and they're much more convenient. But I think personally, and it's just been my experiences, that all-wheel drive. You never know when something is just going to be out there underneath your wheels or tires, and you never really have the reaction time to throw on a switch, and having it always there is a little bit more safety, but at the same time, it does have more wearable items, and it can cost a little bit more fuel. So there's trade-offs in everything, I guess, you get in life.
Yeah, there are trade-offs between the two. All-wheel drive is definitely something that in the last few years people have really worked on to improve the efficiency of it, the maintenance, getting it to be a lower maintenance item than it has been in the past.
Well, and you talk about the advances made, and for me personally, I think one of my favorite all-wheel drive systems is that X-Drive, and you're an expert on the BMWs, and so take a minute and please elaborate on what the X means and how it works.
Well, what the X-Drive is in BMWs is it's a sophisticated all-wheel drive system, whereas in the past, if one wheel would start to slip, all of the power would go to that wheel, and it would basically leave you stuck. And it'd be up to the driver to try and get yourself unstuck from wherever that is, whether it's dirt, snow, or ice. And the X-Drive, what they've done is they've actually kind of taken the driver out of the equation in terms of the driver's skill, and they've turned it to where the car is what's doing all of the work in terms of if one of the wheels start to slip, it can actually transfer power away from that wheel to the other 3 wheels. If both of the fronts start to slip, it can transfer power to the rears. It can transfer power wherever it needs to go to keep you from getting stuck and keep you going straight down the road.
Well, and in the old, in most all-wheel drive systems, it seems that they typically transfer that power front to rear, rear to front only, but in the X-Drive, it can be crossed diagonally too, I understand.
The way it does that is it actually interacts with the vehicle's ABS and traction control systems.
Now, tell me more about that.
The ABS, anti-lock brakes, is basically a system that, under normal braking conditions, will simply keep the wheels from locking up for two reasons: to reduce your stopping distance in low traction situations, and also to keep your ability to steer while you're braking.
Well, and I've heard it explained once before is, that a human can only, in a extraordinary circumstance, pump the brakes a few times per second, but these computers can actually pump the brakes hundreds of times per second and incrementally slow the wheel speed down without just stopping it, making the tires lose traction with the pavement and initiating that slide and loss of control.
The newest systems out there, they're lightning fast in terms of how fast it can modulate the pressure to each individual wheel. It doesn't have to do it to all four wheels or two wheels at once like early systems had to. It can really control exactly what's happening in the car as you're driving it and allow you to just focus on driving.
You mentioned ABS, traction control, and the xDrive all working together. Tell us a little bit more about the traction control side of that.
The traction control would be, you're coming around a corner on a winter day. You don't see any snow or anything, so you're going at normal driving speed. You come around a shaded corner and there's a patch of ice, and typically you'd probably slide off the road and get in trouble. The traction control will actually modulate where the power is going to each wheel. It'll set the ABS to brake each individual wheel as needed and do whatever's necessary to keep you going down that road straight.
Well, when in our environment, and this is really an important conversation in Reno coming up on the winter, there's a lot of people that will drive over Lake Tahoe, coming over Mount Rose. And if you've ever done that in the winter, there's that first steep drop, and it always seems to be there's a real steep cliff there full of snow, and the snow melt off runs right across the road there. It's shaded at the base. There's almost always a patch ice. They do the best they can. They do a great job, NDOT does, trying to keep that road safe. But, when you talk about coming over that and you have a system that is that intelligent, it could be your safety, your life, your family's, safety as well. So I found that, I've driven that road in that xDrive system and never felt more confident. Now, I never owned a four-wheel drive before I moved to Reno. And in the early 1990s, when the first time I went to buy tires for one, I wanted to buy two because two seemed to, have a little bit more life on them, and they told me I shouldn't do that. Were they just trying to sell me, a whole set of tires, or was there some truth in why they said that?
A lot of people have asked that question. There's definitely some truth behind that, especially if you have two tires that are totally bald, totally gone. You absolutely need two new ones. And you have two that have 50% tread left. A lot of people want to say, well, why do I need these tires? Are you just selling them to me, or what's the deal? And what's really going on is as a tire wears, the circumference of it is actually reduced to where it has to spin more often to go the same distance versus a brand new tire. And so when you put two new tires on the front and you have two old tires on the rear, it actually causes everything to always be spinning at a different speed, which can actually cause things in the all-wheel drive or xDrive system to wear out prematurely. It can cause the system to have malfunctions, lights to come on, all kinds of different problems, and cause the system not to work effectively.
So it's not just that it can wreak havoc on the internal components of those drive axles and components. It could also affect the safety and overall operation of the vehicle. And I thought they were just trying to, maybe sell me a couple extra tires while I was there.
They were probably looking out for you.
Well, it was good advice. And, you hear it, it makes sense, that a tire circumference does change. The distance outside of it does change, and it makes some sense. But, I guess in the past, coming from Southern California originally, that I never really had to think like that. You just pick up the two that you needed at the time. Tell me a little bit about the minis. I mean, what I find so fun about them is they're just exciting cars to drive. You get inside and you could fit a football team in them, and it doesn't make any sense, the space inside of them. But there's a lot of things that you can do to even enhance the performance capabilities and handling capabilities of those cars. What's your favorite part about working on minis?
The Mini Coopers are really an interesting and fun little car. There's a lot of different ways to go about driving them and modifying them. There's a million different things you can do, and they can be a really, really fun little car.
And not to mention, how many miles per gallon can they get?
I've seen them up to 40 miles per gallon in some of these cars when people are driving them nicely.
Well, you know, in some cases, you got some people driving cars, and if they just take their fuel bill and take the amount of money they save, they can own a Mini.
Absolutely.
At just the reduction monthly cost of their cost of fuel reduction. So, you know, just a lot of fun. You got to drive one if you've never have. And
Yeah.
I love them. They handle like a sports car, and like I said, you can fit a family of 10 and a football team inside of them all at the same time. My wife is that's one of on her bucket list vehicles that she'll definitely have to have in one day or another. And thank you again, John, for being here with us again. Reno Rennsport, your absolute industry finest experts in the automotive community in Reno, specializing in Porsche, BMW, and Mini. And if you haven't met them, you should make it a point just to stop by and say hi. Tell them you heard about it on the CarBuyer Advisor. And if you missed any part of the show today, you can visit our website at thecarbuyeradvisor.com. Visit our preferred businesses listings. You'll find all of our guests there, and Reno Rennsport is there as well. You can also click on our Facebook and YouTube.